3 days after the battle, Admiral Kim walked through the ruins of Velnaris, the capital city of Velos Prime. The beautiful crystal spires that once reached toward the sky were now broken stumps. Parks filled with flowering trees had become ash-covered graveyards. The smell of smoke still hung in the air. Beside him walked Prime Minister Velanis, the leader of the surviving Velani government. She was tall and graceful, with fur like golden silk and large, gentle eyes that had seen too much death. Her people looked like deer that had learned to walk on 2 legs and use their hands to create beautiful things. "We never expected anyone to come," she said in her musical voice. The translation device turned her words into human language but couldn't hide the sadness in her tone. "When we sent the distress call, we knew it was hopeless. The Council has never helped species like us before." Kim looked at the ruins around them. "The Council failed you. We couldn't let that stand." They stopped at what had been a school. The Krillians had bombed it on the 2nd day of their invasion, killing 300 children and their teachers. Now human Marines were helping Velani. Survivors dig through the rubble looking for anything that could be saved. "Why?" Velanis asked. "Your people barely know us. We have nothing to offer you in return. Why did humans risk everything to save us?" Dr. Choi, who was walking with them, answered, "Because it was the right thing to do. Humans learned long ago that if we don't protect the innocent, no one will." In the distance, Captain Yoon's medical teams worked in field hospitals, treating injured Velani civilians. The aliens were amazed by human medicine. Drugs and techniques developed on a world where everything tried to kill you were incredibly effective at healing. The hospital ship UHS Mercy floated in orbit above them, its holds full of Velani refugees who had nowhere else to go. Captain Yoon had turned her ship into a temporary home for thousands of survivors. But not everyone was happy about the human intervention. Ambassador Thekalon of the Zenthari Council stood in the governor's mansion, which had been turned into a temporary command center. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes like chips of ice. He had arrived that morning with a council fleet of 20 ships. "This is unacceptable," he told Kim in a cold voice. "Humanity has committed an act of war against the Krillian hegemony without council approval. You have violated every treaty that governs galactic civilization." Kim looked at the alien diplomat with disgust. "We stopped a genocide. If that violates your treaties, then your treaties are worthless. The Krillian hegemony has filed formal complaints," Theklon continued. "They demand reparations for their destroyed ships and the return of their prisoners. They also want you and your senior officers handed over for trial." Captain Park, who was standing nearby, laughed bitterly. "They want reparations? For what? The right to murder innocents?" "The law is the law," Thekalon replied. "Personal feelings cannot override legal obligations." Commander Lee looked up from the tactical display where he was coordinating rescue operations. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many species has the Council saved from extinction in the past century?" Theklon's expression didn't change. "The Council's job is to maintain stability, not to interfere in local conflicts." "Local conflicts?" Dr. Choi stared at the diplomat in amazement. This was genocide. The Krillians were systematically exterminating an entire species. "The Krillians have the right to expand their territory," Thekalon said. "The Velani chose to inhabit a planet in their expansion zone. That was their decision." Kim felt his temper rising. "The Velani have lived here for 10,000 years. This is their home. Nevertheless, the law is clear. You must surrender immediately and accompany me back to Council space for trial. Refuse and humanity will be expelled from galactic civilization permanently." Before Kim could respond, Prime Minister Velanis stepped forward. Despite her small size compared to the other aliens, her presence filled the room. "Ambassador," she said quietly, "may I ask you something?" Thekalon looked down at her with barely concealed contempt. "What? Do you have children?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I have offspring, yes. If someone came to kill your children and a stranger risked his life to save them, would you demand that stranger be punished for not asking permission first?" Theklon's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since his arrival, he had no quick answer. The humans saved our children, Villanis continued. They came when no one else would. They fought when no one else dared. They bled to protect people they had never met. And you want to put them on trial for it? The room was silent. Outside they could hear human and Villani voices working together to clear debris and search for survivors. The law, Teclon began. Your law, Villanis interrupted, is designed to protect the strong by abandoning the weak. It values order over justice, stability over life. If that is galactic civilization, then perhaps it needs to change. Later, that day Kim met with General Mordek, the highest-ranking Krillian prisoner. The lizard-like alien was huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes. He sat in the makeshift prison with his hands bound, but his expression showed no shame or regret. You fought well for primitives, Mordek said in his hissing voice. But you have started something you cannot finish. The hegemony has 1,000 ships. When they come for revenge, your precious Villani will die anyway. Kim studied the alien general. Why? What did the Villani ever do to you? Mordek laughed, a sound like breaking glass. They existed. They occupied a world we wanted. They had resources we needed. That is enough. They're peaceful beings, artists, and philosophers. Which made them easy to conquer, Mordek replied. Or it would have if you Deathworlders hadn't interfered. Deathworlders, Kim repeated. You say that like it's a bad thing. Your species is an abomination, the Krillian general hissed. You come from a hellish planet that should have killed you all. Instead, it made you into something unnatural. Creatures that fight without purpose, that risk themselves for strangers, that value individual lives over the good of the many. Kim leaned forward. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Mordek's eyes narrowed. Nothing terrifies the Krillian hegemony. Then why are you so angry? If we're just primitives from a backwater world, why does our success bother you so much? The general was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more thoughtful. Because you've given them hope, he said finally. For centuries, weaker species have accepted their fate. They knew that no one would help them, so they submitted to those stronger than themselves. But now, he gestured toward the window, where human and Villani voices could be heard working together. Now they've seen that someone will fight for them. They'll start to believe they can resist. They'll start to think that maybe the strong don't have the right to rule the weak. Kim smiled grimly. Good. It's about time. That evening, Kim received a message from Earth. President Kim So-Ra appeared on the communication screen, her face serious but proud. Admiral, she said, the Council has delivered their ultimatum to Earth Command. We have 30 days to surrender you and your officers, pay reparations to the Krillians, and accept restrictions on our military. If we refuse, humanity will be expelled from the Galactic Council and face economic sanctions. Kim felt his stomach tighten. Ma'am, I take full responsibility for my actions. If my surrender will protect Earth— Stop right there, President Kim interrupted. Do you think we built the human fleet to abandon our best officers when they do the right thing? Do you think we spent centuries fighting our way off Earth just to bow down to alien bureaucrats? Ma'am? The president's expression hardened. We're not surrendering anyone, Admiral, and we're not paying a single credit to the Krillians. If the Council wants to expel us for preventing genocide, then maybe we don't want to be part of their club anyway. Kim stared at the screen. The diplomatic consequences will be severe, President Kim agreed. But there are some things more important than diplomacy. Justice is one of them. The right to protect innocent life is another. What are your orders, ma'am? President Kim smiled. Continue your mission, Admiral. Help the Villani rebuild. And get ready. We're about to find out if humanity is alone in caring about right and wrong, or if there are other species who've been waiting for someone to stand up to bullies. The communication ended, leaving Kim alone with his thoughts. Outside his window, Velos Prime's surviving moon cast silver light over the ruined city. But in that light, he could see something hopeful. Humans and Villani working side by side, building something new from the ashes of destruction. The galaxy was about to change. The only question was whether it would change for the better, or whether the forces of order and stability would crush this small spark of hope. Kim looked up at the stars and made a silent promise to the Villani, to his crew and to every innocent being in the galaxy. They would not stand alone. The first Krelian patrol ship approached the human fleet with confidence. Its captain had destroyed dozens of refugee vessels over the past 3 days. These new ships looked small and primitive, easy targets. Captain Zhang Qitai of the UHS, Vengeance watched the enemy ship on his display. The Krelian vessel was twice the size of his heavy cruiser, with smooth blue-green armor that sparkled in the starlight. "Range?" he asked his weapons officer. 200,000 kilometers and... "Closing, sir." "Wait until 50,000, Zhang ordered. Let them get close." The Krelian ship fired first, a bright energy beam that struck the Vengeance's armor. Warning lights flashed on the bridge as the hull temperature rose, but the thick metal plates held firm. "Their turn," Zhang said calmly. "Fire." The Vengeance's railguns spoke with a sound like thunder. 6 tungsten rounds, each weighing 50 kilograms, raced toward the enemy at incredible speed. The Krelian captain had 3 seconds to realize his mistake before the projectiles tore through his ship's hull like paper. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Debris scattered across space, glowing orange in the light of Velos Prime's sun. On the Krelian flagship, Admiral Veltar stared at his display in shock. One of his ships had just been completely destroyed by a single volley. That wasn't possible. Galactic warfare was about disabling ships, not obliterating them. "What kind of weapons are those?" he demanded. His weapons officer was pale with fear. "Unknown, sir. Some kind of kinetic projectile system. Primitive, but effective." "All ships concentrate fire on the unknown vessels," Veltar ordered. "Destroy them immediately." But the human fleet was already moving. Captain Park led her group in a sweeping attack from the sun side, using Velos Prime's star to blind enemy sensors. Commander Lee brought his ships through the asteroid belt, the floating rocks providing cover from Krelian energy weapons. Admiral Kim approached from the dark side of the system with the main battle group. The UHS Retribution and 4 other warships moved like hunting wolves, silent and deadly. Flight leader Nam launched her fighters first. The small craft raced ahead of the main fleet, their engines glowing blue-white against the black of space. Nam had trained for this moment her entire life, using human reflexes and aggression against an enemy that fought by predictable rules. The Krelian fighters came out to meet them. The alien pilots expected a normal engagement. Long-range energy, weapon fire, careful maneuvering, minimal casualties. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who fought like Earth's ancient fighter pilots in atmosphere. Nam led her squadron in a head-on charge. At the last second, she rolled her fighter and fired a burst of kinetic rounds into a Krelian craft's cockpit. The enemy pilot, trained to avoid collisions at all costs, couldn't react fast enough. "Break and attack," Nam shouted over the radio. "Show them how predators fight." The human fighters scattered like a pack of wolves, each pilot using tactics that would have been suicide to most species. They accepted damage that should have sent them fleeing, pressed attacks that any reasonable pilot would have abandoned, and fought with a ferocity that terrified their enemies. Meanwhile, the main fleet engaged the Krelian battle line. Captain Park's group struck first, her ships emerging from behind Velos Prime's sun like vengeful angels. "All weapons, rapid fire," Park commanded. The human ships unleashed everything they had. Railguns, missile pods, and plasma cannons filled space with deadly projectiles. The Krelian ships, designed to absorb energy weapon hits and survive, had no defense against kinetic rounds moving at relativistic speeds. 3 enemy cruisers died in the first 30 seconds. Admiral Veltar watched his carefully planned formation collapse into chaos. These humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They accepted casualties that would make any civilized species retreat, then used those losses to fuel even greater rage. "Sir, they're not trying to disable our ships," his tactical officer reported. "They're trying to completely destroy us." "That's barbaric," Veltar snarled. What kind of species fights to total annihilation? He was about to learn. Commander Lee's group burst from the asteroid belt like ancient cavalry charging across a battlefield. His ships had taken damage from the rocky debris, but they pressed their attack without hesitation. The UHS Storm, heavily damaged from asteroid impacts, rammed directly into a Krillian dreadnought. As the two vessels locked together in a twisted embrace of metal, Lee's Marines poured through the breach. Colonel Bay led the boarding assault personally. The Krillians had never faced human Marines in close combat. They were about to discover why Earth's high gravity and dangerous wildlife had created the galaxy's most effective soldiers. The first Krillian squad the Marines encountered was wiped out in seconds. Human reflexes trained by dodging Earth's predators were far superior to alien reaction times. Human strength developed in Earth's crushing gravity allowed them to overpower enemies twice their size. Major Shin's Reaper units were even more devastating. These elite soldiers moved through the enemy ship like death incarnate, their training and equipment perfectly adapted for close-quarters combat. Decks 1 through 5 secured, Bay reported over the radio. Enemy resistance is collapsing. Admiral Kim smiled grimly as he heard the report. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to end the fight permanently. The battle reached its climax when the Krillians tried their most desperate tactic. Admiral Veltar ordered his ships to use Volani refugee vessels as shields, believing the humans would stop their attack rather than risk innocent lives. He could not have been more wrong. Instead of hesitating, the human fleet went berserk. Every ship captain who saw Volani civilians being used as human shields felt a rage that went back to humanity's darkest moments, times when evil people had used innocence as protection while committing atrocities. Captain Park's voice cut across all frequencies. All ships, rescue operations are now the priority. I don't care what it costs us. Save every civilian you can. What followed was the most reckless rescue operation in galactic history. Human ships threw themselves between Krillian weapons and Volani refugees, accepting terrible damage to protect people they had never met. The UHS Thunder, its hull nearly split in half, managed to dock with a refugee transport and evacuate 3,000 Volani before finally losing power. Captain Yoon's hospital ship, the UHS Mercy, raced through the battle zone collecting escape pods and damaged civilian craft. Enemy fire struck her ship repeatedly, but her crew never stopped their rescue work. We've got children on board, Yoon reported. Volani families all injured. We need to get them to safety. Negative, Kim replied. Stay in the combat zone. Keep saving people. We'll protect you. The sight of humans sacrificing themselves for alien civilians had a profound effect on the battle. Krillian crews, raised to believe that conquest was natural and mercy was weakness, couldn't understand what they were seeing. Some Krillian ships simply stopped firing. Their crews refused orders to shoot at vessels obviously engaged in rescue work. Others pressed their attacks with desperate fury, knowing that these humans represented everything their empire stood against. The final phase of the battle was brutal and short. Admiral Kim brought the UHS Retribution alongside the Krillian flagship. Both ships were heavily damaged, their hulls glowing red-hot from weapons fire. This is Admiral Kim of the Human Defense Fleet, he broadcast on all frequencies. Surrender now and you'll be treated according to galactic law. Continue this slaughter and you'll face the full fury of Earth's children. Admiral Veltar's response was to order a ramming attack. His flagship, one of the most powerful ships in Krillian space, accelerated directly toward the human vessel. Kim smiled coldly. Ramming speed it is. Show them what a death world builds its ships for. The two flagships collided in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. But where the Krillian dreadnought's hull crumpled like paper, the human ship's massive armor held firm. The Retribution had been built to survive in the Sol system's asteroid fields and the crushing gravitational forces near Jupiter. It had been built by humans, for humans, on a world that killed anything not strong enough to survive. The collision tore both ships apart, but Kim's crew was ready. They had practiced boarding actions in Earth's most dangerous environments. As the two vessels locked together, human Marines poured through the breach like avenging angels. The battle for the Krillian flagship lasted only minutes. 4 hours after the first shot was fired, the Battle of Velos Prime was over. Of 47 Krillian ships, only 8 survived to surrender. The human fleet had lost 3 vessels completely and suffered heavy damage to the rest. But they had saved Velos Prime, and more importantly, they had saved the Volani people. As rescue operations began on the planet's surface, Admiral Kim stood on his damaged bridge and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was about to learn that humanity had just changed the rules of galactic civilization forever. The human fleet moved through hyperspace toward Velos Prime. Inside the ships, everyone was busy getting ready for battle. Admiral Kim walked through the corridors of the UHS Retribution, checking on his crew. The ship felt different now. There was energy in the air, the kind that came before a fight. In the weapons bay, Chief Engineer Oh Dong-wook worked with his team to prepare the guns. Human ships were built differently than alien vessels. Where most species used energy weapons and shields, humans preferred thick armor and kinetic weapons, guns that fired solid metal at incredible speeds. "How are the railguns?" Kim asked as he entered the bay. Oh looked up from a massive cannon. He was covered in grease and smiling. "Perfect, sir. Each gun can fire tungsten rounds at 30% light speed. These Krillians won't know what hit them." Kim nodded. Human weapons were considered primitive by galactic standards, but they worked. A chunk of metal moving that fast could punch through any armor ever built. In the Marine quarters, Colonel Bae Jun-soo was talking to his soldiers. The Marines were checking their equipment, armor, rifles, and the close combat weapons humans were famous for. Next to him stood Major Shin Hee-jin, leader of the Elite Reaper unit. Her soldiers were the best fighters humanity had ever produced. "Listen up," Bae said to the assembled Marines. "We're going to fight an enemy that thinks we're weak. They think all species are like them, afraid of real combat. They're about to learn why Earth is called a death world." The Marines cheered. These men and women had trained their whole lives for moments like this. Earth's high gravity, dangerous weather, and deadly wildlife had made humans stronger and faster than most aliens. What made them truly dangerous was their willingness to fight for others. On the bridge, Dr. Choi was explaining their enemy to the senior officers. He had spent hours studying Krillian culture and military tactics. "The Krillians are reptiles," he said, showing pictures on the main screen. "They're about 7 feet tall with thick scales and sharp teeth. They believe conquest is their natural right. They've enslaved 12 species across 3 star systems." Commander Lee studied the tactical data. "What about their military?" 47 ships, Choi replied. 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, and 29 smaller vessels. Their weapons are standard galactic. Energy beams designed to disable ships for capture. They want to take prisoners, not destroy everything. "That's their mistake," Park said. "Human weapons are designed to destroy, not capture." Lieutenant Commander Han was monitoring enemy communications. "Sir, I'm picking up Krillian transmissions from the Velos system. They're talking about how easy this conquest is. They sound bored." Kim felt his jaw tighten. The Krillians thought destroying an innocent species was routine work. They had no idea what was coming for them. In the ship's medical bay, Captain Yoon Da-eun was preparing for casualties. She commanded the hospital ship UHS Mercy, which would follow the battle fleet to help wounded Volani survivors. Yoon had seen the results of Krillian attacks before. Entire populations wiped out, or enslaved. "How many medical supplies do we have?" she asked her staff. "Enough for 10,000 patients," came the reply. "But if the Krillians have been there for 3 days," Yoon nodded grimly. "They might be too late to save many Volani, but they would. Save everyone they could." Back on the bridge, Kim gathered his senior officers around the tactical display. The hologram showed the Velos system, a yellow star with 4 planets. Velos Prime was the 3rd planet, green and blue like Earth. "Here's the plan," Lee said, pointing at the display. "The Krillians have positioned their fleet around the planet. They're not expecting attack, so their formation is spread out for maximum ground coverage. We'll split into 3 groups," Kim added. "Park will take 4 ships and attack from the sun side. Lee will lead 3 ships through the asteroid belt. I'll bring 5 ships in from the dark side of the system." The plan was simple but effective. Instead of the long-range energy weapon duels most species preferred, humans would get close and use their superior firepower to end the fight quickly. Dr. Choi looked worried. Admiral, the diplomatic consequences of this action could be severe. The Council might expel humanity entirely. Kim looked at his friend. Doctor, my grandmother lived through World War III on Earth. She told me stories about what happened when good people did nothing while evil ones acted. I won't let that happen again. The Krillians outnumber us 4-1, Lee warned. They outnumber our ships, Park corrected. They don't outnumber our determination. As they talked, more distress signals came from Velos Prime. The Vellani were still broadcasting, though their voices were getting weaker. The eastern continent is burning, one transmission said. They've destroyed the Great Library, thousands of years of knowledge gone. Why is no one coming to help us? Han turned off the speaker, but everyone had heard. The Great Library was famous across the galaxy, millions of books, art pieces, and philosophical works created over centuries. Now it was ash. In the fighter bay, flight leader Nam So-young was preparing her squadrons. Human fighters were small, fast, and heavily armed. The pilots who flew them had reflexes trained by Earth's dangerous environment. Remember, she told her pilots, we're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting so that species like the Vellani can continue to exist. Every Krillian ship we destroy is thousands of innocent lives saved. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velos system. What they saw made everyone angry. 3 of the 4 moons around Velos Prime had been shattered by mining equipment. The debris formed ugly rings around the once beautiful planet. The planet itself was covered in smoke from burning cities. My God, Park whispered. Refugee ships were trying to escape into deep space, but Krillian patrol craft were hunting them, down like wolves chasing sheep. As the humans watched, a civilian transport full of Vellani families was destroyed by enemy fire. That's it, Kim said quietly. All ships, attack formation. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you hurt innocents, while humans are watching. The 12 human warships spread out and began their approach. Their dark hulls were hard to see against space, and their electronic warfare systems made them nearly invisible to Krillian sensors. In the command center of the Krillian flagship, Admiral Veltar was reviewing conquest reports when his sensor operator called out, "Sir, we're detecting unknown ships at the system edge." Veltar looked at the display with mild interest. "Probably more refugees. Send a patrol to destroy them." "Sir, these ships are different. They're moving in attack formation." Now Veltar was curious. "What species would dare attack us? The Council never interferes with our operations." "Unknown, sir. The ships don't match any design in our database." Veltar studied the sensor readings. 12 ships against his 47. Either these aliens were very stupid or they knew something he didn't. "All ships, prepare for combat," he ordered. "Let's see what these fools are made of." The human fleet continued its approach. On every ship, crews made final preparations. Weapons were loaded, armor was checked, and prayers were said. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home. But they were human, and they had come to stop a genocide. The battle for Velos Prime was about to begin. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The human patrol fleet moved slowly through space near the outer rim, far from Earth and the busy parts of the galaxy. 12 warships traveled together, their dark hulls looking like sleeping giants among the stars. Kim was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had commanded ships for 30 years, fighting pirates and protecting human colonies. Most aliens thought humans were too violent, too dangerous. They called Earth a death world because of its harsh weather, deadly animals, and constant wars. The Galactic Council let humans join 73 years ago, but they still treated them like children who could not be trusted. Captain Park So-min walked up to him. She was younger than Kim, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Sir, the patrol is going well. No problem so far." Kim nodded. "Good. How are the new crew members doing?" "They're learning fast," Park said. Commander Lee has them running combat drills every day. Lieutenant Commander Han is teaching them proper radio procedures. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft sounds of computers and the crew working. Commander Lee Tae-jin sat at the tactical station, checking weapon systems. He was a serious man who studied every battle in human history. Han Yuri worked at the communications desk, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. Dr. Choi Min-ho stood near a computer screen, reading reports about alien cultures. Suddenly, Han looked up from her station. Her face was worried. "Admiral, I'm getting a strange signal. It's on the emergency frequency." Kim walked over to her desk. "What kind of signal?" "It's weak, sir. Very far away. But it sounds like a distress call." Han pressed buttons on her computer. Static filled the air, then a voice came through. It was high and musical, speaking in a language the computer slowly translated. "Please. Anyone who can hear this. We need help. The Krillians came 3 days ago. They're killing everyone. Our cities are burning. We have no weapons, no way to fight them. Please help us." The bridge became completely silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing to listen. The voice continued, becoming more desperate. "This is Prime Minister Velanis of Velos Prime. The Krillian hegemony has invaded our world. They're taking our people as slaves. They're destroying our homes. We are a peaceful people. We don't know how to fight. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We're dying." Kim felt his stomach tighten. He knew about the Krillians. They were a race of lizard-like aliens who conquered weaker species and made them slaves. They had powerful ships and no mercy for those who could not fight back. "Dr. Choi," Kim said, "tell me about the Vellani." Choi hurried over with his computer, tablet. "They're herbivores, sir, plant eaters. They look like tall deer with hands. Very peaceful culture. They spend their time making art and studying philosophy. No military at all. Their planet is beautiful, covered in forests and crystal cities." "Where is Velos Prime?" Kim asked. Lee checked his star maps. 47 light years. "From here, sir. Outside Council space, we could reach it in 18 hours. Kim stared at the tactical display showing their location in the Vellani system. "Han, try to contact the Galactic Council. Tell them about the distress call." Han worked at her station for several minutes, then shook her head. "Sir, I reached the Council Emergency Response Center. They say Velos Prime is outside their territory. Any military help would need a formal vote by all Council members." "How long would that take?" Park asked. 6 to 8 months, sir," Han replied. "They said they're sorry, but some losses are needed to keep the galaxy stable." Kim felt anger rising in his chest. 6 months. By then, every Vellani would be dead or enslaved. The Council cared more about their rules than about innocent lives being lost. The distress signal kept playing. Now there were sounds of explosions in the background. The Vellani voice was crying. "They're bombing the schools now, the children. Please, someone help us. We don't want to die." Park stepped closer to Kim. "Sir, we have to do something." "The Council said no," Kim replied, but his voice was not convinced. "The Council isn't here," Lee said from his station. "They're not listening to children die." "Doctor," Choi looked up from his tablet. "Admiral, I've been studying human history. Whenever our people saw innocent beings suffering, they helped. It didn't matter what the cost was. It's who we are." Kim looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, humans who had grown up on a dangerous world where you learned to protect those who could not protect themselves. Earth had taught them that life was precious because it was so hard to keep alive. The communication system crackled again. This time, the Vellani voice was weaker. "This may be our last transmission. The Krillians are landing near our capital city. We can see their ships from here. Huge dark things blocking out the sun. They're using some kind of weapon that turns our people to ash. Please, remember us. Remember that we tried to live in peace." Kim closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, safe in her school. He thought about the Vellani children who would never grow up if no one helped them. "Captain Park?" He said quietly. "Yes, sir?" "Call all ship captains. Tell them to prepare for combat operations. Park smiled. Yes, sir. What should I tell them about council approval? Kim looked at the stars where the Villani were dying. Tell them we're going to do what humans have always done. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Council approval be damned. The bridge erupted into activity. Everyone had work to do. Ships needed fuel, weapons needed checking, and Marines needed to get ready for battle. As alarms sounded throughout the fleet, Kim made one last transmission to Earth Command. This is Admiral Kim Dae-ho. The fleet is moving to assist innocent aliens under attack. We may face political problems later, but we will not let genocide happen while we can stop it. We are proud to be human. The 12 ships turned toward Velos Prime and jumped into hyperspace. 6 months later, President Kim So-ra stood before the largest gathering in Earth's history. Representatives from 43 different species filled the Great Assembly Hall on the rebuilt Velos Prime. The building was a symbol of cooperation, designed by Villani architects, built with human engineering and decorated with art from dozens of worlds. Today, President Kim announced, we establish a new foundation for galactic civilization, not based on fear or political convenience, but on justice and the protection of innocent life. The audience included beings that had never sat together before. There were the Altarian bird-like creatures who had withdrawn from the Galactic Council in protest, the insect-like Hivari, whose colonies had been raided by Krillian slavers for decades, even some former Krillian slaves, freed when their master's empire collapsed. Admiral Kim Dae-ho sat in the front row, wearing his dress uniform with pride. Beside him sat Prime Minister Villanis, who had become the first non-human president of what they now called the Free People's Alliance. The past 6 months had been difficult. The Galactic Council had imposed economic sanctions on humanity and any species that supported them. They had sent threats and ultimatums. They had tried to isolate Earth and its allies from the rest of galactic civilization, but something unexpected had happened. Instead of giving in to pressure, more and more species had joined the alliance. Young civilizations that were tired of being ignored by the Council. Older species that had watched injustice happen too many times. Even some Council members had quietly begun sending supplies and support. Captain Park So-min, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the Alliance's combined fleet. Ships from 17 different species flew together, their crews learning from each other. Human tactical doctrine, aggressive, direct, focused on protecting civilians, had spread throughout the Alliance military. The Council calls us rebels. President Kim continued. They say we threaten galactic stability. But what kind of stability allows genocide? What kind of order protects the strong by abandoning the weak? In the audience, Ambassador Theklan watched with growing concern. The Zenthari diplomat had come to negotiate, hoping to convince some alliance members to return to the Council. Instead, he was watching the birth of something that could challenge everything the Council represented. Commander Lee Tae-jin, now a fleet admiral, had spent months helping other species develop their own defense forces. Races that had been defenseless for centuries were learning to protect themselves. The galaxy's balance of power was shifting. Dr. Choi Min-ho had established cultural exchange programs between alliance worlds. Humans were learning Villani philosophy and art. The Villani were adapting human engineering and medicine. Other species were sharing their own knowledge and traditions. A new kind of civilization was emerging. We have 3 fundamental principles, President Kim announced, reading from the Alliance Charter. First, all sentient beings have the right to live free from oppression. Second, advanced civilizations have a duty to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Third, justice matters more than political convenience. The charter had been written by representatives from all alliance species, but its language reflected human values. The idea that individual life was precious, that the strong should protect the weak, and that some principles were worth fighting for. Colonel Bae Junsu, now a general, trained Alliance Marines from dozens of worlds. Alien soldiers learned human close combat techniques, developed on Earth where everything was a potential threat. They also learned the human concept of leave no one behind. The idea that you never abandoned a fellow soldier, regardless of species. Captain Yoon Da-un commanded a fleet of hospital ships that provided free medical care to any world that requested it. Her crews included doctors and nurses from many species, all working together to heal the galaxy's wounds. The Krillian hegemony had indeed sent their promised revenge fleet, 1,000 ships led by their most experienced admiral. They arrived at Velos Prime expecting to find a small human force and defenseless Vellani civilians. Instead, they found 200 Alliance warships from 23 species, all commanded by officers trained in human tactical doctrine. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of Krillian military power. General Mordek, still a prisoner on Velos Prime, had watched the battle from his cell. Afterward, he spoke to Admiral Kim with something like respect in his voice. "You've destroyed us," he said simply. "Not just our ships, but our entire way of thinking. For 1,000 years we believed that might made right, that the strong ruled because they deserved to rule. Now our former slaves are free, our colonies have rebelled, and our people are questioning everything they once believed." Kim looked at the defeated general. "Good. It's about time your people learned to live with others instead of ruling over them." "What happens to us now?" Mordek asked. "That depends on you," Kim replied. "The Alliance doesn't believe in punishment, for its own sake. If your people want to join galactic civilization as equals instead of conquerors, we'll help you rebuild. If they want to continue the old ways," he shrugged, "then they'll face the consequences." The ceremony on Velos Prime continued with representatives from each Alliance world signing the charter. When Prime Minister Velianis signed for her people, there were tears in her large, gentle eyes. "6 months ago, my people were dying," she said. "We had lost hope. We believed we would be forgotten, that no one in the galaxy cared enough to help strangers. The humans proved us wrong. They showed us that compassion and courage still exist among the stars." Flight Leader Nam, so young, now commanding Alliance fighter operations, watched from the balcony as ships from dozens of worlds flew in formation, overhead. Each vessel was different, some sleek and elegant, others built like floating fortresses, all united in purpose. The Galactic Council had made one last attempt to stop the Alliance. They sent their entire military fleet to impose order on the rebel worlds. The confrontation took place in the neutral Aldebaran system, where representatives from both sides agreed to meet. Admiral Park commanded the Alliance fleet, 400 ships from 31 species. Across from them waited the Council fleet, of 600 vessels led by species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. But when the Council Admiral gave the order to attack, something unprecedented happened. Nearly half his ships refused to fire. Crews from dozens of Council species had been inspired by the Alliance example. They could no longer fight to preserve a system that protected the strong by abandoning the weak. The Council fleet dissolved without firing a shot. Its commander, a proud Zenthari officer, surrendered his flagship and requested permission to join the Alliance. Now, as President Kim finished reading the Alliance Charter, she looked out at the assembled representatives and felt hope for the galaxy's future. "We are not perfect," she said. "We will make mistakes. We will face challenges that test our resolve. But we will face them together, as equals, united by our commitment to justice and life." The ceremony ended with the Alliance Anthem, a song written by Vellani composers using human musical themes and performed by a choir that included voices from 43 worlds. The harmony was strange but beautiful, like the Alliance itself. Afterward, Admiral Kim walked through the memorial garden that had been built where the old Vellani capital once stood. Each tree represented a life lost during the Krillian invasion. Each flower honored a species that had suffered under the old galactic order. But among the memorials were signs of new life. Human children played with young Vellani, their laughter echoing through the gardens. Engineers from a dozen species worked together on reconstruction projects. Artists collaborated on sculptures that no single world could have created alone. "Sir?" Captain Han Yuri, now an admiral in charge of Alliance, communications approached him. "We're receiving reports from across the galaxy. 17 more species have requested alliance membership. 3 council worlds have declared independence to join us. Kim smiled. And the council's response? They're adapting, Han replied, diplomatically. Several council members have quietly adopted alliance principles. They're starting to intervene when innocent species are threatened. Good. Competition breeds improvement. As the sun set over Velos Prime, Kim thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple distress call from a species humanity had never met. It had led to the transformation of galactic civilization itself. Dr. Choi joined him in the garden, carrying a tablet full of reports from Alliance worlds. Admiral, you should see these medical statistics from the Refugee Relief Program. We've saved over 10 million beings from various conflicts in the past 6 months. And the cost? Kim asked. Significant, Choi admitted. But every species in the Alliance has contributed. They understand that protecting others ultimately protects themselves. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of construction and cooperation that filled the air. Finally, Choi spoke again. Do you think we've really changed things? Or will the old ways return when people forget why? We fought? Kim stopped beside a memorial statue, a human and Vellani figure standing together, one protecting the other. That depends on us, he said.